My name is Barry Davis from BAM. I've got a question for Martin. I was just curious about the project that you presented on there in Blackfriars, I believe. You mentioned that it was on a design and build procurement. I'm curious as to whether there was a novated design team in that situation, or whether you actually presented an exemplar design.
Yeah, the design team were novated. So Mace came on board at the end of stage D. And so Blackfriars was done very much sort of one step at a time, where we sort of implemented the stage D design, the BIM at stage D. The design team worked that through to stage E, and then we passed the model over to Mace with the design team, and they developed it further from there. So the subcontractor chain, the cladding structures, all those guys, then fed into that model. And Mace used it as a construction tool as well. As I say, they were learning. I think it was their first project they did properly in BIM. And it was very much a learning experience, but we saw some of the product there as far as the roof structure and how that worked. So they were all novated over.
Okay, yeah. And so did Mace employ the design team?
Yes.
Your design team?
Yeah.
Okay. And just to touch on something that John referred to then, I'd be curious then as to how long were Mace involved prior to the start of construction on site?
It was quite a short period, it's only 3 months.
Okay.
On the Hanover job, the other projects I suppose we've actually employed, it's actually Mace again, coincidentally, but they've actually came in without running at stage D, but they're giving some pre-construction advice. They're not formally appointed as a contractor, but to get that interface with Crossrail resolved at an early stage, we've actually brought them on earlier, and it will still go out to competitive tender, but we've got sort of as a construction consultant, if you like, from want of a better word, they've brought into that process.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Rob? Hi, I'd a question here for John. He mentioned that there was a need for an industry-wide standards for collaboration. Is PAS 1192 not that standard that we can use?
Again, as I said, I'm not an expert on this. Maybe Aidan or one of the lads might have an idea, but PAS, I think, is just a kind of a filing system that you use with BIM. It's a filing system, so it's common to all. Maybe Aidan, you might have a view on that.
Yeah, I might feed in a bit onto that. I mean, certainly it's a benefit and it's something that needs to be there, but we found on the projects that we're currently collaborating on, the systems aren't really there to do it yet. PAS is a great standard, but the actual practical systems aren't there. We're developing them as we go along. So we've come up with our own systems, but we're finding that we have to implement those systems with external people as well. So until such time as the industry beds down with a standard that we all know, we can get on and start from day one that this is how we do it. It's a roadblock.
Sorry, Alan Hoare from CITA. Just very briefly, just to mention, Martin, you mentioned stage D and stage E. Of course, what Martin's referred to there is the RIBA reworked plan of work, which is a UK plan. We need to do that here in Ireland. And I know that there's a plan in Ireland to develop some special work groups to look at standardisation, and so that these work processes fit into our contracts and into our own plan of works. So we've a body of work to do here in Ireland, which is important. Okay, any other question?
Simon Fraser, Hussey Fraser Solicitors. I have a question for John. The benefits of collaboration have been mentioned here several times this morning, and we also are aware that the public works contracts are currently being looked at from a government point of view in terms of what revisions can be made. Now, they currently don't include any mention of BIM or indeed any mention of collaboration as far as I can see. And I would just like to get your comments as to whether you think this current review of the contracts, given the timing, represents an opportunity to maybe include BIM within that framework and maybe move the contracts towards a more collaborative environment.
God, Simon. I don't know what I have to say about the public works contract. It's not collaborative anyway, it's adversarial. and suits the government and suits the Department of Finance, which is a problem in itself. We all know in the industry that isn't the way it works. It needs to be collaborative, and that's where the efficiencies come in. I would love to think that the government would consider BIM and some form of introducing BIM to create that collaboration in the review of the public works contracts. I'm involved myself from the CIF point of view in that. I think it's highly unlikely. But I would love to think we could push that button, but I think it's unlikely. And I think, in actual fact, the changes we're going to get on the public works contract will be minimal, unfortunately.
Good. May I just pick up on that point? The RAI, along with the other, our sister organisations, are working with government on the GCCCs to try to get this in there and to recognise it. So the work is being done on it. How long it's going to take, I'm not sure. It's most of the stuff to do with contracts takes quite some time, but it certainly is a recognised issue and one we're working on.
How you doing? Pat Slattery from Outdocs. Just a question for Martin, really, and it sort of goes back to something Robin said in his introduction, just about the shift in effort to sort of earlier in the project to resolve issues, in the pre-construction stage and less effort in the construction stage. And I just wonder whether, as a client, you make any accommodation for that in terms of your appointments or your agreements with design teams, or whether they just suffer that.
I think the short answer, we know to be honest. I mean, we try and encourage to set a clear strategy, probably around, I refer back to REBA stages again, but stage B or C, so that's sort of feasibility stages. We usually procure our projects on two-stage, design and build. So the contractor again is on board to the latter stages of stage D. And then straight away we start looking at the construction phasing of it. So it's not contractually, I guess it's not really tied in, but it just works because it's the timing we start introducing these aspects.
Thank you.
Hi, Jim Peters from PG Haggerty's. Martin, a question for you. It's in relation to the FM side and the service provided by the design team in providing the assets that you would then use running the projects further on. Do you have a metric or a way of identifying the value that you attribute to that for the design team in relation to sort of a percentage of their fee?
It's always we do pay an additional fee for including BIM on our schemes. And to be honest, the FM side of it, we're only just experiencing one of our projects at the moment properly, as far as the level of detail and the asset tagging and those items. So we're learning. We haven't actually got an FM model working yet on the Blackfriars Road. We've got a hybrid model that's sort of we're trying to refine. But on this Lawrence House project, we're working on that at the moment. So there is a fee that is to be paid for that extra bit of work, but it should prove invaluable in the long term for the scheme, for the reasons that were pointed out earlier. You avoid all those boxes sitting in a basement car park somewhere.
Thank you.
Actually, just to pick up on the earlier question, actually on the contract side of things, we always have a BIM execution plan, and that's quite well structured as far as what's got to be delivered when. So I guess contractually there is the contractor still deliver a working BIM model prior to commencement on site. So there is targets to hit for the design team as much as the contractor.
Ralph Montagues, just before I asked the question, I just wanted to clarify something. I chair a committee for the RAI, and PAS 1192, sorry John, is more than just a filing system. It actually is a standard for a process. And the Institute of Architects have been promoting the adoption of that as a standard, because it's something that we strongly believe that the industry needs consistency in approach. And we really recommend that people take the standard, read it, and it defines a process more than just a filing system. It defines what clients need to do, what designers need to do, and so just wanted to clarify that before. But the question I wanted to ask, I suppose, and it's maybe to all three of you, is Martin, you mentioned in your presentation that there's a sort of 0.5% cost implication of implementing BIM on a project, but do you have any metrics on the other side as to savings that the process has brought to projects, and maybe from your point of view, you spoke a lot about the value of information to the whole asset life cycle. Do you have any metrics around costs or what that value of the information might be? And John, I think if all three of you could comment on that. There is a cost, obviously, but what is the corresponding value?
Ralph, yeah, a very good question, and I guess a question that we keep reminding ourselves on as the technology and as the participation in BIM-related projects continue, and the more BIM is actually applied through FM-type situations. And I guess with our project in the CITA Challenge, we're trying to actually find the answer to that question. There's a lot of anecdotal comments. There's a couple of figures from the UK. An interesting one I just last night came across was BAM claiming that 90% through the use of BIM for FM, they've reduced their technical queries by around 90%, which is a huge figure. And it would be quite interesting to see what metrics they've applied to actually claim that. Not that I'm doubting it, because I think we're all quite familiar with digital technologies have the ability to prove those figures right. But to answer your question, we are quite keen to get to that answer, and is one of the main reasons why we are participating in this CITA Challenge, to understand what the KPIs are going to be, and how we can actually put a value to that in savings.
From our perspective, I think we've only really through very loose benchmarking, to be honest, as far as the risk percentage we paid on 2 or 3 projects. We're pretty sure that that's come down from where we would have ended up if we hadn't used BIM. So we went through quite a lengthy process with the contractors, designing out the various clashes to get them down to a reasonable level. Obviously, you can't eliminate them all, but certainly, so from that perspective, you can't really put a figure against it other than what a gut feel as far as what we thought we saved them from, as I said earlier, from a time perspective as well. We're pretty positive that we'd have lost a lot of time on that roof on Blackfriars if we hadn't have used the BIM model. And various people from weeks to months, I think there's a good few weeks were saved up there, which obviously costs money.
I suppose from a contractor's point of view, we haven't done an analysis on it, but from previous, on our slides there, we said up to 40% elimination of variations. Now, I think that speaks for itself. Not alone have you got elimination of 40% of variations, we all know what happens with variations invariably. Some of them end up in conciliation and arbitration, and there's the cost. So, from our point of view, it's the collaboration, the reduction in variations, which inevitably in some cases end up in conciliation or arbitration, and there's huge costs involved there, and once anybody goes there, there's no winners. Okay, who they are. Client isn't the winner, the contractor is the winner, and nor is the design team. So, from my point of view, certainly, I think it brings a huge amount of value. I think it's really, really important, and we're doing our utmost to work on projects where BIM is involved. I think it's essential, and it will bring all the efficiencies that we spoke about in those slides in relation to time and collaboration. And if we are all collaborating together, it brings huge efficiencies, and I think it's absolutely essential.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If there are no other questions, I think we'll finish off. First of all, I'd like to just say I'm very concerned as to how Eben and John got the photographs of my office. There's obviously a leak in there somewhere. I'll have to check the Dropbox account. I think really that this has been really a very interesting session, and seeing it from the three different sides is really very interesting. I think the two things that we need to, or we can bring away with this with absolute clarity, is the first one is collaboration, and the second one is efficiencies. Efficiencies are very easy to see once you get over the first hump, which is your 1.5 additional cost. But again, as John says, think of what it saves you in the end. And I think that collaborative approach, it has been quite traditional in this country that there has been a collaborative approach between contractors, design teams, and indeed clients and procurers. I think that the strength that BIM gives to that, and it's a sine qua non of BIM that you have to have that attitude. I think long term, that's really probably one of the biggest benefits. I think that Martin's braveness in taking a 2D model and converting it into a BIM project of 17 stories is breathtaking. I think that Eben's view that the life cycle analysis of a building and the collaborative system of whole asset approach is absolutely crucial to the sustainability of what we build in the future. I think that's a huge benefit from BIM. John is one of those classic contractors who loves what he does. And again, the efficiencies that he can produce out of this system are just fantastic. So that's just a little thumbnail sketch of each three of the speakers. It was extremely interesting. I thank them very much on your behalf for what they've done. I'd also like to thank Alan and Suzanne for arranging everything, for putting in the huge amount of work in the background. I got some of the emails. I can't imagine what it was like organizing this. And I thank you all for coming here. Thank you very much indeed.